The seasoned janitor, Roy Thompson, had spent countless years diligently toiling at the auto shop, seamlessly merging into the surroundings. One day, in a light-hearted moment, the mechanic challenged him to tackle an exceptionally intricate engine issue that had baffled everyone. Everyone burst into laughter. Who could have anticipated that Roy, clad in his simple overalls and possessing an unpretentious demeanor, was on the verge of revealing something unforgettable to them all? The subsequent events rendered the whole shop speechless. It took everyone by surprise. Before we dive in, please give this video a thumbs up and let us know your location in the comments. Your support enables us to share more impactful narratives. Let us commence. Roy Thompson had been a fixture at Joe's auto shop for as long as anyone could recall. His role was straightforward: wipe the floors, tidy the equipment, and keep a low profile. Yet Roy had always been one to keep his grievances to himself. He had mastered the art of staying under the radar, diligently completing his tasks while steering clear of the spotlight. The other workers frequently teased that Roy was like the shop's invisible man, a figure you hardly noticed, until the moment arose when you required him to tidy up a spill or retrieve an item. Yet, there was an enigmatic quality to Roy that remained undiscovered, a subtle depth he possessed. Concealed behind those time-worn eyes, a talent that, if revealed, might have transformed everything. Years had passed since Roy last tinkered with a car engine, yet in his younger days, before life had worn him down, he had been a skilled mechanic. The proprietors were blissfully unaware, and he found satisfaction in that ignorance. After all, who would anticipate that a weathered janitor might possess greater knowledge about engines than the experienced mechanics who toiled on them daily? On a brisk afternoon, amidst the familiar buzz of conversation, Dave, one of the younger mechanics, was grappling with a complex engine issue. After hours of effort, the mounting frustration was becoming evident. The engine stubbornly refused to turn over regardless of their efforts. "I just don't understand," Dave murmured, wiping the sweat from his brow with a rag. "This should be functioning by now." A handful of the other mechanics congregated, sharing their insights. Yet as they endeavored to unravel the problem, their frustration only deepened. Every mechanic offered a unique perspective, yet none could crack the issue at hand. In that instant, Mark, known for his quick wit and playful banter, glanced over at Roy, who was methodically sweeping the floor in a quiet corner of the shop. He stood quietly at the periphery of the room, taking in the entire scene without uttering a single word. "Hey, Roy," Mark exclaimed, his tone laced with irony. "Do you believe you can give this a try? Perhaps the janitor possesses the skills to repair the engine that the professionals struggle with." Their laughter resonated, bouncing off the stark concrete walls. All eyes shifted to Roy, anticipation hanging in the air as they awaited his reply. It was intended as a light-hearted jest, nothing beyond that. The elderly gentleman, with his silver strands and worn-out overalls, undoubtedly lacked the knowledge to repair an engine. It was common knowledge, yet Roy's gaze lifted from his broom. For a brief instant, the room fell into silence as though everyone had momentarily overlooked Roy's ability to speak. The elderly gentleman placed the broom aside and cleaned his hands on his overalls, his face a mask of inscrutability. Roy spoke slowly, his voice calm yet firm. "I believe I can resolve this." All fell quiet in the room. All eyes were on him, caught in a web of uncertainty about whether he was being genuine or merely indulging in the humor of the moment. Dave, the mechanic who had been toiling away on the engine, cast a glance at Roy, his expression a blend of bewilderment and incredulity. "And you? Can you resolve this?" "You can't be serious," Dave exclaimed, a nervous chuckle slipping out. Yet Roy remained silent. He strolled over to the engine, each movement purposeful, as if he were a seasoned expert in this routine. The onlookers held their breath, anticipating a misstep, waiting for him to stumble and confirm their doubts, to become the subject of their ridicule. Instead, Roy advanced with assurance, his hands deftly raising the car's hood. The shop had never witnessed anyone tackle a car in such a manner before. Unlike Roy, he extended his hand toward the tools, his motions fluid and exact, as if this were a routine he had mastered throughout his existence. The engine that had once been an insurmountable enigma mere moments ago now appeared to yield to Roy's deft hands. As he toiled, the atmosphere of the room started to shift. The derisive chuckles had faded away, giving way to an unsettling stillness. The young mechanics shared bewildered looks. They found themselves in the midst of an inexplicable experience. Roy, the janitor, was diligently working on an engine that everyone else had long since abandoned. Time slipped away. Roy toiled with unwavering determination, his hands gliding with a skillful fluidity that dispelled any uncertainty. He had encountered this challenge previously, managed it, and triumphed over it. It felt like the clock had turned back to his younger days, and in that moment the years he had distanced himself from the engines he once cherished faded into insignificance. With a decisive turn of his wrench, Roy stepped back, surveying his work. He brushed the perspiration from his forehead and gazed at the engine. A soft murmur enveloped the atmosphere. The engine sprang to life, humming effortlessly like a finely tuned instrument. Silence enveloped the room completely. All eyes were fixed on the car, then shifted back to Roy. The individual who had merely moments before been tidying the floor had just accomplished what they had deemed unachievable. The engine has been repaired. A stillness enveloped the scene. For a brief moment, interrupted solely by the soft drone of the engine. One by one, the mechanics started to share their thoughts. "Excuse me? What was your approach to achieving that?" Dave inquired, his voice scarcely rising above a murmur. Roy offered a gentle smile, his eyes shimmering with a subtle contentment. There was no need for him to elaborate. The mechanics had discovered a lesson that would remain etched in their memories forever. Roy, the janitor, had just revealed that appearances can often mislead, reminding them never to judge someone's capabilities by their outward appearance. Their experience would remain etched in their memories for a lifetime. The room lay in silence, with the gentle hum of the engine Roy had just fixed as the sole sound echoing through the air. The mechanics remained motionless, gazing at him as though he were a spectre, an entity they had all failed to notice. Silence enveloped the room, and for the first time, Roy sensed the gravity of their gaze, not filled with derision, but rather with a newfound admiration. They had misjudged him, and now they were observing something remarkable. Dave, who had been the most vocal in rejecting Roy just moments earlier, was the first to break the silence. His voice carried a soft timbre, tinged with uncertainty. "Roy, what led you to figure out how to fix that? You're merely the custodian." The word struck Roy with an unexpected force, yet he managed to conceal his reaction. He had always been indifferent to titles. For years he had occupied the role of a janitor at Joe's auto shop, a position that kept him in the shadows, largely overlooked by the majority. Yet, in that instant, as the engine's hum enveloped the surroundings, he understood the extent of what he had been restraining. Roy dedicated years to mastering engines, delving into the nuances of cars, from the tiniest components to the most complex systems. Yet, everything had transformed. Time had elapsed. The years spent crafting and troubleshooting had given way to the monotonous cycle of mopping floors and sweeping dirt. The knowledge remained with him, unyielding and persistent. It lay hidden within, biding its time for the perfect opportunity to emerge. The moment had finally arrived. Prior to my time here, Roy started off gradually, his voice unexpectedly calm. I was a skilled mechanic and I took pride in my work. However, circumstances evolve, life transforms. I thought it best to step back and allow the younger individuals to shine. The atmosphere was still as the mechanics absorbed his words. It was quite overwhelming. Everyone had taken Roy for granted, viewing him merely as a weary old janitor, a man who seemed to struggle even with recalling his own name, much less the intricacies of repairing a complicated engine. Yet, the manner in which he operated, the serenity and assurance he exuded while tackling the issue, suggested that he had always remained in the role of a mechanic. Roy surveyed the expressions of the young men, who stood captivated, their eyes filled with wonder and respect. He noticed the change in their demeanor. This had ceased to be a mere jest for them. This was genuine. What they had just observed would alter their perception of him for all time. Roy Mark, the mechanic who had cracked the joke earlier, spoke up, his voice now brimming with sincerity. "We had no idea, we never imagined. You were merely the custodian all along." Roy offered a subtle smile, his eyes glimmering with a serene sense of pride. Individuals tend to perceive only what aligns with their desires. At times that approach proves to be more advantageous. People often underestimate a janitor, and that plays to my advantage. The remaining mechanics exchanged glances, beginning to grasp the concept. Today they faced a challenging lesson in humility. The lesson centered on the importance of respect, emphasizing the need to refrain from judging individuals by their appearance or job title. Roy demonstrated that genuine expertise and understanding often lie beneath the surface, not readily apparent to the eye. What truly counted was what was hidden below the surface. As Roy prepared to exit the shop briefly, he caught snippets of a conversation between Dave and Mark. They were discussing him, marveling at how he had repaired the engine with such ease, and reflecting on how mistaken they had all been in their judgments of him. "Wow, I can't believe we ever questioned him," Dave remarked, his tone a mix of admiration and remorse. Mark sighed, reflecting on how Roy had been here all along, surprising everyone with his hidden potential. "We were so focused on viewing him as just a janitor that we failed to see the depth of who he truly was. We lost the opportunity to gain insights from someone with real expertise." Roy found himself smiling quietly to himself. They had discovered something significant today, yet he felt no astonishment. Experience had shown him the futility of placing high hopes in others. Individuals often confined others to labels that aligned with their own prejudices. Yet Roy had always understood that he was more than just his profession. He had always been indifferent to their approval. He had been aware of his value from the very beginning. He strolled back to his broom, grasped it firmly, and resumed his tasks as though nothing was amiss. Yet a change had occurred. The young mechanics regarded him differently now. It became clear to them that Roy was more than merely a janitor. He was a person of vast experience, profound wisdom, and above all, remarkable skill. They would not fall into the trap of underestimating him once more. As the hours passed, the shop settled into an unusual stillness. The typical teasing had transformed into a deep appreciation for the humble, unpretentious janitor who had just resolved an engine problem that had baffled everyone. As Roy swept the floor, a sense of lightness filled his heart. He didn't have to demonstrate anything to them, yet by doing so, he revealed the significance of looking deeper than appearances. At times, the individual who seems the most improbable to thrive possesses the solutions to the challenges that others are grappling with. For Roy, it was merely another day at Joe's auto shop, yet for the young mechanics, it would become a day etched in their memories forever. A day that served as a poignant reminder that genuine talent and intrinsic value transcend mere appearances. The next day there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. Roy had anticipated the familiar early morning hustle in Joe's auto shop, but today it seemed more like a tranquil pause before chaos. The younger mechanics regarded him with a blend of respect and hesitation. They watched him repair the engine, effortlessly, as if it were a trivial task. Their eyes had caught the subtle brilliance woven into each of his actions. In that instant, it felt like the whole atmosphere had transformed completely. Mark, who had pushed Roy the most fiercely the previous day, was the first to make his way over to him. This time he arrived without a joke or a hint of sarcasm. His expression was solemn, his voice filled with deference. "Roy, I've been pondering the idea of picking up a few of your techniques. Your experience in this field is extensive. You certainly possess a depth of knowledge that I underestimated." Roy took his time to respond. He gave a slight nod, his hands occupied with the broom as he diligently swept the floor. He had always shied away from seeking attention or recognition. He found solace in the shadows, diligently toiling away, fulfilling his responsibilities. Yet it appeared that the environment surrounding him was transforming. The young mechanic standing before him had shed the arrogance and dismissiveness that once characterized him. The man who had once laughed at his expense now transformed. At that moment, he found himself seeking guidance. Another mechanic, Jason, caught wind of the conversation and approached. Indeed, everyone has been discussing it. Your expertise is evident. Perhaps there are valuable insights we could gain from your perspective." Roy lifted his gaze just enough to meet the eyes of the young men who had once mocked him. Their expressions were genuine now, their faces filled with a thirst for knowledge. Roy experienced an unusual sensation. He devoted countless years to his craft, laboring quietly and diligently, never seeking acknowledgement or reward. At this moment, he commanded their focus and earned their admiration. Roy rested against the wall for a brief moment, contemplating the choices laid out before him. He had the ability to reveal it all, to impart every lesson, every clever tactic, and every nugget of wisdom he had gathered throughout the years. Alternatively, he might choose to remain in the shadows, persist in his task of sweeping the floors and allow them to navigate their own path. Roy had never entertained the idea of teaching them. He had always preferred to work alone, shunning the limelight and avoiding any form of self-promotion. Yet, the reality was irrefutable. He was essential to them. His expertise, knowledge, and experience were essential to their needs. They required a mentor, someone to illuminate the aspects they had overlooked in their pursuit of the newest fads and devices. "I'll tell you what," Roy said slowly, finally breaking the silence. "Allow me to reveal a few insights to you. However, grasp this concept. Fixing an engine requires more than mere knowledge. One must cultivate patience. Patience is essential. Many individuals seek quick paths, yet none exist. Dedication and an open mind are essential for your journey ahead. It is only through this experience that genuine understanding will emerge." The mechanics shared glances, yet each one nodded in unison. They had witnessed the extent of Roy's abilities. They observed him resolve an issue that eluded all of their attempts. They stood poised for knowledge. They were prepared to invest the effort. As the day unfolded, Roy embarked on his journey of imparting knowledge to the budding mechanics. It was a departure from the vibrant lessons they had come to expect, a stark contrast to the instant solutions they had learned to rely on. Roy chose to concentrate on the fundamentals, the elements that ensured an engine operated seamlessly, the nuances frequently disregarded. He emphasized the significance of accuracy, the need to comprehend each component of the engine, and the worth of determination. The mechanics leaned in, their earlier doubts giving way to a true sense of intrigue. Roy was unrestrained. He imparted lessons not just on the mechanics of the engines, but also on the vital virtues of humility and patience in their craft. He instilled in them a deep appreciation for the art, helping them understand that every expert, regardless of their skill level, began their journey from the same foundation. As the day drew to a close, the shop had undergone a remarkable transformation. The typical disarray of malfunctioning vehicles and hurried fixes had given way to a serene, concentrated atmosphere. The mechanics were engaged, taking in the insights Roy had imparted. They were not merely improving their skills, they were evolving into more admirable individuals. They were beginning to perceive the world through a new lens, grasping that a person's worth transcends their job title or outward appearance. Roy observed from a distance as they diligently carried out their tasks. For the first time in years, he experienced a genuine sense of pride in his work. He had not merely repaired an engine, he had mended something profound, something far more significant. He had rekindled the spark of ambition in his youthful peers. As the day came to an end, Roy experienced a profound tranquility. He had never pursued the limelight, yet now, for the first time in ages, he understood that he had belonged in this moment all along. He found himself precisely in the right place at Joe's auto shop, imparting the essential lessons of diligence and modesty to the upcoming generation. In a world that consistently ignored individuals like Roy, it may have seemed like a minor triumph, yet for him, it meant everything. It was the acknowledgement he had never desired, the admiration he had never pursued, and for the first time, he realized that often the most profound changes occur subtly, without celebration, without anyone even realizing until it is too late. As the mechanics wrapped up their tasks for the day and started to leave, Roy lingered for a moment, staring at the shop. It was no longer merely a venue for car repairs. It had evolved into something far more significant. It transformed into a space for development, for education, and for the realization that no individual, regardless of their position, should ever be undervalued. As the days morphed into weeks, the evolution at Joe's auto shop persisted. The young mechanics, previously jaded and indifferent, now approached their tasks with a revitalized sense of mission. They had transformed from mere employees into eager apprentices, ready to absorb every ounce of wisdom that Roy imparted. Each day, they would seek him out, filled with curiosity and a desire to uncover the nuances that transformed their efforts. It became evident that they had begun to view Roy in a different light, beyond merely the role of janitor. To them, he had transformed into a mentor, a guide, and a living embodiment of the strength found in experience. Roy lifted his gaze, casting it upon the group of young men who had once mocked him. Their expressions were genuine now, their faces filled with a thirst for knowledge. Roy experienced an unusual sensation. He had dedicated countless years to his craft, laboring quietly and diligently, never seeking recognition or reward. At this moment, he commanded their focus and earned their admiration. Roy rested against the wall for a moment, contemplating the choices laid out before him. He had the ability to reveal it all, to impart every lesson, every trick, and every nugget of wisdom he had gathered throughout the years. Alternatively, he might choose to remain in the shadows, persistently tending to the flaws while allowing them to navigate their own path. Roy had never entertained the idea of teaching them. He had always preferred the quiet of solitude, shying away from the limelight and the gaze of others, yet the truth remained inescapable. He was essential to them. His expertise, knowledge, and experience were essential to their needs. They sought a mentor, someone to illuminate the overlooked paths, while they pursued the ever-changing fads and shiny new devices. "I'll tell you what," Roy said slowly, finally, breaking the silence. "I can reveal some insights, but grasp this clearly. Fixing an engine requires more than mere knowledge. One must cultivate patience. Patience is essential. Many individuals seek quick fixes, yet none exist. Dedication and an open mind are essential for your journey ahead. It is only through this experience that genuine understanding will emerge." The mechanics shared glances, yet each one nodded in unison. They had witnessed the extent of Roy's abilities. They observed him resolve an issue that none of them were able to tackle. They stood poised for knowledge. They were prepared to invest the effort. As the day unfolded, Roy embarked on the initial journey of imparting knowledge to the budding mechanics. It was a departure from the vibrant lessons they had come to expect, not the instant solutions they had learned to rely on. Instead, Roy concentrated on the fundamentals, the elements that ensured an engine operated seamlessly, the nuances that were frequently ignored. He emphasized the significance of accuracy, the need to comprehend each component of the engine, and the worth of determination. The mechanics absorbed every word, their earlier doubts transformed into authentic intrigue. Roy was unrestrained. He imparted lessons not just on the mechanics of the engines, but also on the vital virtues of humility and patience in their craft. He instilled in them a reverence for the art, helping them understand that every expert, regardless of their skill level, began their journey from the same foundation. As the day drew to a close, the shop underwent a remarkable transformation. The typical disorder of malfunctioning vehicles and hurried fixes had given way to a serene, concentrated atmosphere. The mechanics were engaged, taking in the insights Roy had imparted. They were not only improving their professional skills, but they were also evolving into more admirable individuals. They were discovering a new perspective, realizing that a person's worth transcends their job title or outward appearance. Roy observed from a distance, taking in their efforts. For the first time in years, he experienced a genuine sense of pride in his work. He had not merely repaired an engine, he had mended something profound, something far more significant. He had rekindled the spark of ambition in his youthful peers. As the day came to an end, Roy experienced a profound tranquility. He had never pursued attention, yet now for the first time in ages, he understood that he had belonged in this moment all along. He found himself precisely in the right place, at Joe's auto shop, imparting the essential lessons of diligence and modesty to the upcoming generation. In a world that consistently ignored individuals like Roy, it may have seemed like a minor triumph, yet for him it meant everything. It was the acknowledgement he had never desired, the esteem he had never pursued, and for the first time he realized that often the most profound changes occur subtly, without celebration, without anyone even realizing until it is too late. As the mechanics wrapped up their tasks for the day and started to leave, Roy lingered for a moment, staring at the shop. It was no longer merely a location for repairing vehicles. It had transformed into something far more significant. This space transformed into a hub of development, a realm of knowledge, and a reminder that every individual, regardless of their position, deserves recognition and respect. As the weeks unfolded, the evolution at Joe's auto shop persisted. The young mechanics, previously jaded and indifferent, now approached their tasks with a revitalized determination. They had transformed from mere employees into enthusiastic apprentices, keen to absorb every ounce of wisdom that Roy imparted. Each day they would seek him out, brimming with inquiries, hungry for the nuanced insights that could transform their efforts. It became evident that they had begun to view Roy in a different light, beyond merely his role as the janitor. To them, he had transformed into a mentor, a guide, and a living embodiment of the strength found in experience. Yet, despite their increasing abilities, Roy continued to embody humility. He remained the individual who tidied the floors, who maintained the shop's cleanliness, who took on the responsibilities that others shunned. His contributions evolved from simply keeping the shop running to actively influencing its culture. He fostered a setting in which humility and diligence were held in the highest regard, where, irrespective of title or rank, each person had the opportunity to make a significant contribution. One day, an extraordinary event unfolded. Their customer entered, a prosperous businessman from afar. Seeking a swift solution for his high-end vehicle, the vehicle emitted an unusual sound, and the man's irritation was evident. The enthusiastic young mechanics, keen to showcase their recently acquired skills, eagerly seized the chance to work on the car. They exuded confidence, maybe even to a fault, believing they could tackle the issue at hand. Ultimately, they had been guided by the finest. However, as they commenced their examination, it soon became clear that this would not be a straightforward resolution. The noise was far from a trivial concern. The issue was more profound, necessitating a comprehensive grasp of the car's complex engine. The novice mechanics put forth their utmost effort, yet their lack of experience was evident. As they toiled away on the car, the businessman's frustration mounted with each passing moment. He started to feel a sense of urgency, insisting that they resolve the issue without delay. His voice grew more intense, his tone more severe. He was accustomed to having his desires fulfilled, and he had little patience for delays. In that instant, Roy advanced. He had been silently watching the whole interaction from the sidelines, his keen gaze absorbing every nuance. The young mechanic's frustration was palpable, and the businessman's impatience was on the rise. Silently he approached the car, his hands calm and assured, as he started to evaluate the problem. The young mechanics observed in awe. It was a sight to behold, witnessing Roy assert himself in such a commanding manner for the first time. The businessman regarded him with a wary gaze, evidently uncertain about the identity of this individual. "Are you aware of your actions?" he inquired, his tone tinged with uncertainty. Roy hesitated before responding. With a swift motion, he lifted the car's hood, his skilled hands working with effortless accuracy. The young mechanics observed intently, captivated by how seamlessly Roy maneuvered through the intricacies of the engine. With every twist of his wrench and every careful adjustment, it became evident that Roy possessed an intimate knowledge of this car. He remained unfazed by its opulence or intricacy. He was a man who grasped the essence of every engine, regardless of its complexity. Roy quickly identified the problem. A tiny, neglected component had come undone, resulting in the engine's unsettling rattle. With a few deft motions, he made the necessary adjustments, then lowered the hood and cleaned. His hands on a rag, the vehicle sat in stillness, its engine purring gently as though it had never known a moment of trouble. The entrepreneur remained frozen in disbelief. He anticipated a long wait, yet Roy resolved the issue in mere minutes. He glanced over at the young mechanics, who lingered in the background, still absorbing the gravity of what they had just seen. They were filled with wonder. This was the moment they understood that true mastery takes time. It was an experience that unfolded gradually, requiring an openness to growth, the acceptance of setbacks, and an unwavering determination to move ahead. The entrepreneur finally spoke, his voice taking on a gentler tone. "I am truly impressed. That took me by surprise." Halted, gazing at Roy with a fresh sense of admiration. "Your expertise is evident." Roy nodded, his demeanor remaining steady. "At times it's less about the knowledge you possess. It's all about understanding where to focus your attention." The young mechanics, observing closely, experienced a surge of respect for Roy. They came to understand that beneath his reserved exterior, he was the very soul of the shop. He was the one who imparted all the knowledge they possessed. In his absence, they would likely continue to struggle with their tasks, overlooking the subtle yet essential elements that truly mattered. In the days that followed, the younger mechanics started to implement the knowledge they had gained from Roy. They adopted a more reflective method in their craft, contemplating every aspect of the engine, grasping how each element integrated into the broader framework. They had begun to take their time with their tasks. They had moved past the search for shortcuts. They toiled with intent, much like Roy had consistently approached his tasks. Roy had grown silent, his words no longer necessary. His deeds resonated more profoundly than any words could convey. He had already demonstrated to them the strength found in diligence, the grace of modesty, and the virtue of perseverance. He demonstrated to them that success wasn't solely about speed or innate ability. It was all about ensuring precision and excellence consistently. As the afternoon waned and the golden hues of sunset spilled into the shop, Joe, the proprietor, made his entrance. After a week spent away on business, he returned to find that something had shifted in his absence. The shop exuded a fresh vibe, marked by an elevated sense of respect and professionalism. Joe had always recognized Roy's worth, but now he truly understood the extent of it. He approached Roy and gave him a friendly pat on the back. "What you've accomplished is truly remarkable, Roy," Joe remarked, his tone brimming with appreciation. "I had no idea how significant your contributions are to this environment. This shop has become something truly remarkable." Roy smiled, a modest smile that conveyed so much. "It's not only me, it's all of us. Collaboration is key for all of us." In that instant, Roy understood that his unassuming, overlooked existence had brought him to a point where he was genuinely impacting the world around him. He had never pursued acknowledgement or glory, yet he had now garnered the admiration of all those in his vicinity. He transformed not just the mechanics of their work, but also their perception of self. They had transcended their roles as mere laborers. They were artisans, committed to their art, and had come to appreciate the significance of diligence and expertise. Roy's legacy transcended the notion of merely being the finest mechanic. The essence lay in motivating individuals to elevate themselves, to embrace their craft with pride, and to recognize that true excellence is born not from easy paths, but from the experiences along the way.